כן, הגדרתי שיהיה אפשר להיכנס לפניך.
יופי.
על מצלמך.
Okay, good morning. Okay, we'll wait a minute or two for people to join in. Oh, okay. Good morning. Amy. Just close the door a moment. Okay. Look out to Sarah also.
Good morning, Rav Steinberg.
Hi, good morning, Emma. Good morning. I see it's more convenient for you by Zoom than in person.
Yes, it's well, also because I'm not going out anywhere, so it certainly is.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you. I'm looking forward.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're all stuck. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Okay. Before we begin halachos, I want to say a few words. Spoke over Shabbat, and they are very well connected to the upcoming days. Very important days that we're commemorating and celebrating tomorrow and the next day, Yom Ha'zikaron and Yom Ha'atzmaut, back to back. So, two ideas from the Parsha. I want everyone to open their videos on the Parsha that reflect on these special days, and both appearing in Parshas Torah, which we had laid this past Shabbat. Firstly, an idea I heard from Rav Lau Senior a few years ago. It's stuck in my head very strongly because it's an amazing idea. Having to do with the beginning of Parshas Torah, when the Torah goes through the process of purifying himself after the Kohen decides that he's no longer has Tarat anymore. So he has to go through a whole sequence of actions and process to make him pure and back to and to have him join the camp and come back into into society. So the way he does it is he takes two birds, שתי ציפורים חיות טהורות, it's erez, ve'ezov, netilat, all kinds of bushes and branches that he brings over to the Kohen, and then the Kohen slaughters one of the birds and dips the other bird, the live bird, dips in the blood of the dead bird, and dips the netilat, ezov, etzerez, all those branches and bushes into the blood of the dead bird and sprinkles the blood on the metzora, besides other things that he does as well. So, and then he lets the live bird, lets it free, el pnei hasadeh. He lets it just go fly away. So Rav Lau asked this amazing question. He says, what's the point of the metzora bringing two birds? After all, he's only using one of them. Only the one that was slaughtered and its blood gets sprinkled on him, that's being used to purify the metzora. But the other bird, all we did was maximum dirty it by dipping it into the blood of the dead one, and then let it free to nature, to the world. So what have we done with it? What's the point of bringing it to the first place when we're not really using it in any way to purify the Torah? So explains Rav Lau that the idea behind it is that truthfully, when the Torah brought these two birds to the Kohen, it was a 50-50 chance for each one of them to be chosen to be slaughtered. The Kohen, randomly decides, or there's a lottery or some type of random decision to choose one to kill and the other to let free. So we're pointing out that the freedom of one is dependent on the other one being sacrificed. That's why also we dip the free one in the blood of the dead, coming to show that the freedom of the other bird is really dependent on the fact that its friend, the bird that was slaughtered, was killed instead of it. And then, according to this, explains Rav Lau, this is the whole idea of Yom Ha'zikaron Yom Ha'atzmaut, which is also connected back to back with Yom Ha'atzmaut. We owe our lives, we owe our freedom, we owe the fact that we have a state that we're living and flourishing and growing. We owe all that to those who sacrificed their lives for us. It could have been any one of us. And it could have been that we wouldn't have a country or a state to begin with. We owe our lives, we owe our freedom, we owe our state to those who gave up their lives to protect us and to get rid of the enemies that wanted to kill all of us. So they are the sacrificed bird, and we dip in their blood in order to live our lives. We can only remain free due to the fact that they sacrificed themselves for us. So I think that's an amazing idea that explains very well the purification of the Torah. And it's another question, follow-up question to this: why is this all connected to the Torah? So it could also be that the Torah, we're coming to tell him, now you want to go back to civil life, you must remember that if people sacrifice their life for us to be free, they don't mean for us to fight each other. They don't mean for us to speak Lashon Hara against each other. They mean for us to live a good life. Otherwise, why they waste their lives for us if we're not behaving nicely one towards another? So, Dafka by the Torah, we're reminding him that if people sacrifice their lives for him to live, he must lead a good life. He must live a life that is worthwhile for others to sacrifice themselves for them. All right, here I see that the connection wasn't good. You know what? Let me put on earphones, and that should help the connecting situation. But I'll repeat repeat the last sentence. I was saying that why is this all related and connected to the Torah? That to teach us that we owe our freedom in our life to those who sacrifice their lives for us. The answer may be, this is right in addition to Rav Lau's idea, which he thought to maybe add to his idea, that we're saying to the Torah that if you want to live and you want to deserve you want to be worthy of living, to use your life and freedom that you received from those who gave up their lives. They didn't give up their lives for us to fight each other, to speak Lashon Hara one against each other, to all right, 1 second. Okay, I hope this will work better. So they didn't sacrifice themselves in order for us to live a bad life one against another. and to treat each other meanly, speak bad one against each other. So we only deserve to live, and by utilizing what they had sacrificed their lives for, these brave soldiers, these holy soldiers, only if we live a good life, or we live a life that we appreciate each other, that we don't speak bad and treat each other in a mean way. Okay, so that's one point that has to do with Yom Ha'zikaron and Yom Ha'atzmaut. Another, mainly for Yom Ha'atzmaut itself, an idea I had a few years ago, that at the end of the Parsha of Torah, the Torah speaks about tzaras habayit, when our house gets affected by leprosy, with leprosy, and so there are stains on the wall, and the person calls the Kohen, and the Kohen inspects those stains, and he asks the house to be cleared out, and he stays for 7 days, and so on and so forth, and decide whether this is actual leprosy or not. And if it is, then there is a chance that the person has to tear down his house, or at least break a wall, and see if it returns, and in the whole house, so on and so forth. So the beginning of this section of Tzaras Habayit, the Torah begins by saying, Ki tavo el haaretz, asher ani noten lachem la'achuza, v'natati negat tzarat beveit eretz achuzatchem. You shall come to the country that I had promised to give you, and I will then bring upon you leprosy on your homes. So Chazal, and Rashi quotes Chazal on the spot there. Chazal detected awkwardness in the phrase the Torah uses here. Ki tavo el haaretz. It sounds like a very festive beginning of something very festive that's beginning now. Ki tavo el haaretz. You will come to the country that I had promised to give you, and I will give you not gold and jewelry, not a happy life and a good life. I will give you leprosy. You'll be affected by tzarat in your homes. It doesn't sound normal that it sounds like we're about to hear something so happy and so full of good and pleasure. We hear about the leprosy. So Rashi, quoting Chazal, explains that truthfully it was a besora tova. It was a good news for them. Why? Because the Amorim, the Goyim that had lived in Eretz Yisrael prior to Yeshua and the Jewish people coming in and conquering the land, they had hid treasures in the walls of their homes. They hid actual gold, jewelry, silver, whatever, as a safe inside the walls. The Jews had no idea of these treasures. When they conquered the land, they lived in those homes. Same as they occupied the homes, same as after the Independence War, the 6-Day War, we occupied Arab homes, and some people in Rechavia, Tel Aviv, and Yerushalayim, or in Lod, in Ramla, and other places, live in Arab homes. So those Jews who came into the land at the very beginning of Yeshua's period did the same. They occupied the homes of the Goyim who were living there before. Little did they know that in the walls of those homes there are treasures. Who knows? Maybe the Arab homes also. We had to try it once. I wouldn't if I would take a risk. But so the leprosy, the tzarat on the walls, actually led the Jew to have to tear down the house, or at least a wall of the house. And when he did that, he discovered the treasure. So here, it's a good thing. It's a besora tova that you'll be having leprosy in your homes, because you'll find these treasures in the end. So that's Chazal's answer to this awkward way of phrasing the Torah, phrasing seemingly awkwardly the leprosy, announcing the leprosy of the home. But I asked myself, this only works for that first generation back then, 3,500 years ago, when they had first entered the country, the days of Yeshua ben Nun. They may have found treasures in the walls of the house. But we're talking about an eternal Torah. The Torah we read should be relevant every single generation, every year, every moment. So Tzarat could have happened many generations after the first comers to Eretz Israel, and they're still reading. It could be referring only to that first generation, but that's awkward in itself because the Torah is eternal. So the message of the Torah should be eternal as well. So how do we understand the happy way that the Torah presents leprosy on our houses when we're no longer living in the homes of the Amorim and there are no longer any treasures in our homes anymore? So why then would it make sense for the Torah to announce in a happy mood, in a happy way, that there's going to be leprosy in our homes? So there could be a deep meaning to this. In Chutz La'aretz, there's no such thing as tzarat habayit. There's no tzarat in Chutz La'aretz. So if a person in Chutz La'aretz sees a stain on his wall, then they should not call a kohen to come and inspect it. They have to call a painter or a plumber to see what the issue is. There's no chance, there's no such thing as leprosy in Chutz La'aretz. Why is that? It should have been almost the opposite. That in the Holy Land, where Hashem supervises over us directly, it should be that we have a holier life, a better life, and therefore there shouldn't be tzarat. In Chutz La'aretz, where Hashem is far away and no direct contact with Hashem in Chutz La'aretz, and the land itself is impure, an impure land, Tumat Eretz Ha'amim, there I understand that there should be tzarat because it's anyway far away from Hashem, and as we know, it makes sense that there should be impurity there. But the answer is the exact opposite. The more the potential to grow, the more potential to fall. That's a very important equation that we find in many, many cases. That when there's potential to become holy and holier and holier and holier, at the same time, if a person doesn't behave properly and doesn't reach its potential, it doesn't live accordingly to what he could reach, then the fall is much, much lower. We find this by Tum'at Met. The fact that only a Jewish body extracts Tum'ah when a person dies, and not a Goy. When you have the body of a Goy who dies, there's no Tumat Ohel. A Kohen is allowed to enter the room where there's a dead body of a Goy, whereas of a Jew, of course, not. The Jew, after dying, extracts Tuma into that room, and the Kohen mustn't enter the room. Why is the difference? Because of the holiness in a Jew when the Jew was alive. The neshama was a very holy neshama. So therefore, when a Jew dies, no longer does the neshama exist. So the vacancy of the holiness creates a hole, creates the terrible situation of tum'ah, imperfect because there was so much potential to be perfect. Whereas by a goy, anyhow, in his lifetime, couldn't reach such high levels of holiness to begin with. So there's not so much of an impression when he dies, to create impurity. It's always like a balance between the two, the holiness versus the impurity. And if it's anyway not on such a high level, then it can't go down too much. Thank you, Sarah, for the shkoyach. So the same here when we read about the tzarat habayit. The Torah is telling us, "Ki tavo el haaretz asher ani noten lachem la'achuza, v'natati negat tzarat v'et eretz achuzatchem." It's good news that we're entering a country that has the potential for us to come close to Hashem to such an extent, to such a high level, that if we don't behave properly, we go all the way down and there's leprosy. There's this vacancy of holiness that causes impurity to a very high level. Whereas in Chutz La'aretz, anyway, there's not too much to go upwards, so there's not too much to fall downwards. Therefore, there's no leprosy there. So it's a Besar Tova that we can have that we're going to have, that there's a potential to, if we chas v'chayil don't behave properly, to have tzarat, because that means that if we do behave properly, as we should, we have this potential to grow and grow to very high levels. And one last point about this issue, my son Amichai, who learns in Merkaz Arav, he quoted from his Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Yaakov Shapira, the son of Rabbi Avraham Shapira Zatzal. He quoted from him a beautiful idea to sum up this whole point. He had asked a question regarding Chazal's answer to our question: how come the Torah announces in a happy manner that there would be tzarat in our homes in Eretz Yisrael? So Chazal answered, because then we may find treasures in the walls of the house. So Rabbi Yaakov Shapira asks an amazing question: why did the Torah hide the fact that the festive and happy way that it's announcing the tzarat is because there are treasures in the walls? Why not say it directly? I will inflict upon you tzarat in order for you to find the treasures in the wall. And why at all does all this have to be in a hidden manner, that if a person sins and then rightfully deserves tzarat, he's going to be rewarded by receiving a treasure? It goes contradictory to our logic. Should it be that this person shouldn't find any treasure? He should be punished for what he did. It seems counteracted to the idea of leprosy. So says Rabbi Shapira something very, very amazing as well, that really it's a conceptual idea what we're talking about here. The concept is, anytime a person is inflicted by something bad, or anything that challenges a person, any trouble that a person has, anything that goes wrong for a person. It may be an individual, it could be a family, it could be the nation, it could be the world. Speaking about Corona. Anytime there's something bad happening or something challenging, one must remember, hidden inside this situation itself is a treasure. Hakol letova. No such thing that Hashem inflicts bad upon us. Anything Hashem does to us really, really is good. We may not understand. We may not understand ever. We may not understand at the moment, but later on we will. And we may understand it immediately. It doesn't matter what stage we understand, but we have to believe in the fact that it's all for our good. So the Torah is telling us, true, negat tzarat. True, it's a bad situation, challenging and terrible, and you break your house, and you're ashamed of what you did, so on and so forth. But truthfully, it's all for your good, because now you're going to correct your ways. Now this person is learned the lesson, and he's going to go back to society behaving properly. So that's really the treasure. True, the Chazal spoke about an actual treasure. But really, it's coming to tell us that behind any challenge, behind any situation that seems so bad for us, really lies something amazingly good that will develop out of the bad. Obviously, if we learn the lesson and we behave and we perfect ourselves, we'll get the goodness that comes out of it quicker, and we'll understand it immediately. If we don't, we may not understand it ever, and we may not receive it in our lives at all, the good that comes out of it. Okay, so all these are ideas that we definitely can take for our lives, and strengthen ourselves as these days go along, and to remember that Hashem does everything for our good, and there must be something that is hidden in this situation that we're in now that hopefully will show up as soon as possible for us to understand why this is going on. Okay, thank you, Tova. Why this is going on, and hopefully we'll find the treasures as the entire world behind all this. Okay, we'll continue our Hilchot Brachot. We're still in the introductory chapter of Hilchot Brachot, we're about to finish this chapter, and then we'll move on to the book Hilchot Brachot of Rav Ophir Malka to discuss specific halachot, examples, situations, and to know which bracha to make on every type of food that we eat in every situation. Okay. The last time we spoke about the fact that one has to prepare their food to the utmost possible level. Okay. Send the recording, B'ezrat Hashem, after the shir, whoever has to leave, or whoever couldn't connect. So send the recording. So we spoke about the fact that we have to prepare the food, that it should be in the best situation possible for us to take the bite immediately after the bracha. If it's opening the package, if it's checking the fruit or vegetable that it's clean from bugs, all things of that sort, it should be prepared perfectly. The fruit has to be prepared perfectly for taking the bite immediately after saying the bracha. By the way, I didn't mention it last week. I remember a friend of mine from Kerem B'Yavne, when we were studying there as a young boy. We had, there was a fellow there that was an extra special tzaddik in many ways. Barely ever spoke. Definitely not divrei chulin. Very special tzaddik. So I remember well that we all went to wash for lunch, for the bread or breakfast, the bread we wanted to eat. We all went to wash, took the slice of bread, said a motzi, took a bite, and then we decided what we would like to spread on the bread. If it's cheese, if it's jam, if it's chocolate spread, whatever it was. We weren't looking for the healthy stuff necessarily as young boys, young fellows. So I remember him distinctly spreading the spread that he chose to eat on the bread. He spread it before he went to wash, which is also an act of preparing the food you want to be exactly as you wish to eat it, and only then say the bracha over it to take the bite. So it's a very nice, correct way of doing that. It's not just a plain piece of bread that you take the bite and then you really make it more delicious. Why not have it the best tasting possible before you take the first bite, because you're blessing Hashem over this opportunity to eat, and so it should be the best manner, the most tasty manner you can get it to before you take that first bite after having said the bracha. That's another idea. Obviously, if you have something whole and it doesn't need any preparation, meaning you don't have to check it from bugs or cut away rotten parts or things of that sort, if it's whole, then obviously better keep it whole. We said that's also a perfection before, upon making a bracha over something whole. So if let's say you have a loaf of bread, a whole loaf of bread which wasn't cut into, so there it takes precedence to make a bracha over a whole loaf of bread than to cut the slice before you go wash in order to be prepared to eat that slice immediately and have even spread on it whatever you want to spread, because the wholeness of it is more important, makes the bracha greater on a more important food than a sliced or cut into food. Although there is this problem of creating a hefsek, an interruption between the bracha and the eating by having to cut a slice from that loaf. So how do we get around this complicated situation? On one hand, we want to make a bracha on a whole thing, which here in this case, a loaf of bread, a whole loaf of bread. The bracha is more important that way. And on the other hand, we want to make it the least interruption between the bracha and the eating. Like by having it a whole loaf, you're cutting it until you get to eat from it. So the answer is on a weekday, not talking about Shabbat, because Shabbat is a whole other issue of Lechem Mishneh. We have to keep the chalot whole as we say a motzi. We have to say a motzi over whole chalot, 2 whole breads, and therefore we don't cut into it at all. But on a weekday, if we happen to have a whole loaf of bread, we haven't cut into it previously. So before we go wash, we should cut into the loaf, I would say, third way into it, third way from top to bottom, and leave 2/3 connected. Go wash until it's yadaim, hamotzi lechem min haaretz, and then finish the cutting and eat it. Then you're making a small interruption between the hamotzi and the eating, and on the other hand, it's still considered whole because it's mostly connected. Mostly connected is still considered whole. So that's the best way to perform the bracha before taking a slice from a whole loaf. Obviously, if it's a sliced bread or you've cut into the loaf previously from a different meal and it's now anyway not whole, then even then, by the way, it's better if you just cut 1/3 of the way for the next slice before you go wash and then cut the whole thing, because you're saying a bracha over a larger piece. Because even 2/3 of a loaf or half a loaf of bread is more than 1 slice. So if it's sliced bread, you buy pre-sliced or you slice it with a machine in the super sal, then you just have slices. That's all you've got. So you have the slice in front of you, and then if you would like, you spread on it before you go wash. You spread it what you want to eat it with, and only then you go wash, and then you have a beautiful, tasty slice of bread with the spreading you chose. But if it's a half a loaf, it's even better to cut 1/3 way in and make the bracha over the half a loaf than to make it over 1 slice, because it's smaller than half a loaf. So all these are very, very exact and accurate ways of blessing Hashem. After all, the bracha is there to thank Hashem for what He gave us, so we want to thank Him in the best way possible, and to thank Him for the most we can before we say the bracha. Okay. The next and last section of this introductory bracha, chapter speaks about כיצד להחזיק את הדבר שמברך עליו. כל דבר שמברך עליו, כדי לאכלו או להריח בו, צריך לאוחזו ביד ימינו כשהוא מברך, ויותר יד בשמאלו. So, while saying the bracha, we should be holding the food in our hands. If it's a food that we prefer not touching because it can get us dirty, if it has sauce, gravy on it, if it's oily, anything of that sort, or if it's just impolite to hold food in your hand, if it's a type of food that we don't normally hold in our hands, then we hold it with a fork or a spoon. That's fine. It's fine too, because it's in your hand, it's an extension to your hand, not to get dirty. So we're holding it in our right hand, before saying the bracha and as we're saying the bracha. Again, firstly, this shows that the bracha is over this food, and also it's the quickest possible way to get it into our mouths after we finish the bracha. There's no need for any other action of taking it and putting it into our mouth. It's already in our hand. If a person is a lefty, they hold it in their left hand, the stronger hand. Okay. Okay, by the way, for bread, specifically for bread, not anything else, but for bread, there's a Kabbalistic idea that one should hold the piece or the loaf or the challah, whatever it is, a slice, with 10 fingers. Holding with 10 fingers and then saying the bracha. So that's very, very specific for bread. All the rest of the foods, enough that it's in one of your hands. If you're righty on it in your right hand, if you're lefty in your left. Okay. Actually, the next portion here has to do with something that we've spoken about at the very beginning of our of this topic of brachos. Discusses the fact that you should say the bracha slowly, with full intent, saying each and every word out loud, thinking of the words, and then he goes through the explanations of the wording. Okay, so this we've done already. We'll do one more last point here. בעודו מברך, אין לעשות שום מלאכה. אפילו תשמיש קל כגון עניף מניפה. לסדר שולחן, לשחק עם תינוק, ללגב את ידיו. Meaning, this is very, very, very important. When we're saying a bracha, it doesn't matter which bracha. It could be the bracha before eating, it could be the bracha after eating, it could be Asher Yatzar, it could be Birkas HaShachar, it could be davening. Anything we're involved in saying a bracha or praying to Hashem, we must be 100% focused on the bracha or on the tefillah. Many times, people say brachos as they're doing things. They may be setting a table, and as they're setting a table, they're saying Asher Yatzar after being in the bathroom. They could be motioning to someone, something with their hand, with their eyes, with their nodding with their head, as they're saying Birkas Hamazon, or as they're saying a bracha rishona. True, someone asked them a question, or someone is about to leave, and you want to motion to them something or remind them of something, but not during a bracha. Don't forget, Baruch Atah Hashem. Atah means we're speaking directly in second person to Hashem. How can we now be involved in other things, in other matters, no matter how important they may be? Nothing is more important than talking to Hashem. We know, we all know that Shmoneh Esrei is of the top situation where we're mamash speaking face to face with Hashem kivyachol as if. But okay, so there we're all aware of the fact that we mustn't do anything. And by the way, also there, sometimes you can find a person motioning something to their child without talking, but they're motioning something to their child as they're in the midst of Shmoneh Esrei. Very problematic. Unless the child is carrying on and making noise, then obviously you anyway can't concentrate, and it may bother other people's concentration. So then you can even lift the kid and take them out of shul and continue davening. If you haven't said any word, you just moved from your spot, you can continue davening somewhere else, exactly where you were. You continue Shmoneh Esrei. If you said a word to your child, then you can't continue. You must start the whole thing over again. Shmoneh Esrei over again. But that's very, very famous to note that we try not to do anything while we're saying Shmoneh Esrei. But the same is true for every bracha. Every single bracha, we must be focused and not doing anything else. There's a saying that is half a joking way. They say that Asher Yatzar isn't Tfilas Haderech. Many times people, as they're walking and doing things, they're saying Asher Yatzar because it's a little bit of a longer bracha than just Shakol Niyah B'Dvaro, and you don't have the patience to say all those words each time you finish doing what you need to do. So you use the time, utilize your time by doing other stuff as saying Asher Yatzar. So you're making it look like Tfilas Haderech. You're on the way doing things. Asher Yatzar is not Tfilas Haderech. You just have to pause, stop doing anything you were doing before, say the bracha. It takes no longer than 20 seconds or half a minute for those who are very, very, very slow and think of the words like we should do. But it's not longer than that. That's not considered wasting time, chas v'chalila. And by the way, Asher Yatzar specifically has a wonderful, amazing meaning to it. If you think of the words, how Hashem created us in such a wise way that everything in our body functions, and what's meant to be open is open, what's meant to be closed is closed, and chas v'chela, if it's not that way, we can die. And it's from the throne of His glory that He created us. Beautiful wordings, and very, very, very important to thank Hashem over being healthy, the fact that we're healthy. So why not spend those 20 seconds focused, not doing anything else, standing. Sometimes it's possible to stand with the face to the wall, so you're really not distracted by anything else. Say the bracha seriously, and then you continue on with life. You'll only gain from doing it this way. Okay. True that there's one point that we must add, halicha איננה נחשבת לצורה של ארעי. ומותר לברך בעודו מהלך. The mere fact that if you're just walking, only walking, but you're completely concentrated on what you're saying, that's okay. You don't have to stand still. It's not like Shmoneh Esrei, where we must stand still with our legs closed and very, very respectfully, full respect to Hashem. Here, meaning other brachos, all other brachos, we are allowed to move around as we're saying them. But the thing is, we're walking, but only walking. We're not doing things as we're walking, as we're moving around and saying the bracha. That not. Only walking is allowed because that doesn't distract our mind necessarily. If it does, then better not walk at all. But it's not necessarily distracting because we're focused totally. We're just moving and not standing still. So that's okay. That can happen, by the way, to a person who's on the way to shul and they want to begin their Birkas Shachar on the way. So they could say the brachos as they're walking to shul. You just have to be very aware, very careful, that when you pass by dog fesses or open garbage pails, these areas are improper places to say Hashem's name. We can't say brachos and tefillah around these things. So the moment we see a closed garbage pail is okay, because it's high enough to be considered its own reshut, its own domain, and when it's closed, it doesn't stink usually. If it's stinking, and stinks doesn't mean where you are. If you would go close to it and smell it when it's all closed, if you would smell a stinking smell, then you mustn't daven when it's in front of you. Doesn't matter if the smell gets to you or not. If you would go over to it very, very close and smell it, you would smell something stinking, then it's improper to say brachos and tefillah when it's in front of you. When it's in back of you, behind you already, you passed it, then after you're past it 2 meters, which is arba amos, which is very interesting, by the way. The same restrictions we have today because of the corona are also 2 meters away from each other. That's the exact halachic term of arba amos. That's the location of a human being, is 4 amos, is 2 meters. So obviously Hashem makes everything work in the same lines, whether it's materialistical or spiritual. Here also, if you've passed or it's to your sides, enough if you're 2 meters away, you can continue your davening. But if it's in front of you, you must stop saying anything until you pass it. So again, only if it's a stinking garbage or feces of a dog, which normally would be stinking, unless it's all dried up, then it's okay to say things next to it. Okay. Okay. Yes. And the very, very, very last point is that לכתחילה אין להפסיק בין הברכה לאכילה יותר בכדי דיבור. Between the bracha and actually taking a bite, one should try not to pause, make a hefsek, make a wait more than 2-3 seconds. Talking in dibur, around 2 seconds. In the moment you finish the bracha, immediately take the bite from the food. This doesn't always happen because sometimes you're hearing kiddush or hamotzi from lechem mishneh from someone else, and until you get your portion, it takes a few moments. But that's the best you can do. The person making the kiddush or saying the hamotzi will be eating immediately or drinking immediately. But those who had listened, they also have a bracha because they've heard, so it's as if they made the bracha. It will take them a little bit longer to drink or eat from what they've heard the bracha over, but it's okay because that's the best they can do. But if it's in your control, you should eat immediately after you said the bracha. And also very, very, very important, people don't know this many times, they're mistaken and they may lose their whole bracha this way. After you've taken the bite, you mustn't speak or even motion to do other things before you've swallowed the amount you took from the food into your mouth. You have to swallow it first, and only then can you talk. Many times people are chewing the food the first time after saying a bracha, and as they're chewing, they're talking. Very, very, very problematic, because the bracha goes to the fact that you've eaten the food. To eat the food isn't just chewing it, it's swallowing it. So only after you've swallowed can you then start talking. And even better, this is already a chumrah. Until now, that's halacha. You mustn't speak or motion to anyone as you're chewing. By the way, b'diavad, b'diavad, if it happens that a person does talk while they're chewing before they've swallowed even the first amount of food they put into the mouth, you don't repeat the bracha. After all, you've begun eating, so it's good enough. The bracha has something to connect to. But if you haven't, but better yet, if you don't speak or say anything until you swallow. So sometimes, beyond that, it's more lechatchila, even more mehadri, but this is only a hiddur, beyond the lechatchila. Hiddur is if you have the entire amount of food that would require bracha achrona immediately in the beginning of the meal. Let's say if you're eating bread or challah on Shabbat, you would like to have first a kazait, which is approximately half or 2/3 of an average slice of bread. First eat half or 2/3 of an average slice of bread before you do anything else in the meal. Even before talking, but at least after swallowing the first bite, you can start talking, but continue eating the bread or the challah. How come? Many times, I think we've spoken about this in the past. Many times it could happen. It could be that a person takes a bite from the challah. I'm talking about mainly on Shabbat or Chag, where the meals are so plentiful, Baruch Hashem, in most of our homes, and there's a lot what to eat, and you don't want to fill yourself up with bread, so you just take one bite of the challah and you continue the meal. Many times, the person at the end of the meal hasn't had a kazait within 4 minutes. It doesn't help to have a bite at the beginning, a bite in the middle, a bite in the end, and then I finished half a slice or even a whole slice. The moment from bite to bite, it takes more than 4 minutes, there's no connection. And even if there was between bite to bite less than 4 minutes, it doesn't work like a chain that connects one to the other. It has to be that the total amount of a kazait, which as we said, up to 2/3 of an average slice of bread, has to be eaten within 4 minutes. That's it. That's all you've got. 4 minutes to finish that. It doesn't take that long if you're concentrated eating. It's an easy thing to accomplish, but you have to be aware of it. You have to be aware that this is how you're supposed to have your kazait. Only then, 2 things happen then. Only then can you say Birkas Hamazon, and this is very scary. It could be people who sometimes have a full meal, Shabbat, Chag meal. They've washed, they've said a motzi, they've eaten from the bread from the challah, but they hadn't had enough of a kazait within 4 minutes. They will now be saying 4 brachos levatala by saying Birkas Hamazon over such a meal. Even though they had a plentiful meal, they're stuffed, they're full, they've enjoyed the meal, but if they hadn't had during the meal, it doesn't have to be at the beginning of the meal. It could be middle of the meal, it could be end of the meal. At a certain section of the meal, you must have kazait challah or kazait bread within 4 minutes. If that doesn't happen, then the entire Birkas Hamazon is levatala. That's one thing. And by the way, what should be the bracha achrona for a person who only took a bite or 2 from their challah and then had a plentiful meal of many, many other foods, and they're nicely satiated and full? but they can't say Birkas Hamazon because they hadn't had 2/3 of a slice within 4 minutes. The bracha achrona, even though they've said a motzi and netilat yadayim before the meal, the bracha achrona, they say over the foods that they had a kazayit of within 4 minutes. The bracha achrona is always dependent on a kazayit within 4 minutes. So if they've had a kugel, lakshan kugel, that would be mazonos, or a piece of cake that would be mazonos, they don't, well, we'll soon speak about the bracha rishona, but the bracha achrona would be now ala michya. Even though they've washed, netilat yadayim, they've said a motzi, they hadn't had the kazayit within 4 minutes, they do not say Birkas Hamazon. They say ala michya. And obviously if they had chicken or drank water in a plentiful amount within the time that's necessary to have the minimum amount to say bracha achrona for, so they say bracha nefashos as well. They act as if there was no bread in that meal, because they hadn't had enough bread or enough challah to require Birkas Hamazon. So that's one thing that changes in a case where you haven't had enough. And this is so crucial because many people stumble on this because they don't realize that they're not eating enough bread at once in 4 minutes to require Birkas Hamazon. The second point that changes in a situation like this, when they've only had a bite here and a bite there of the challah and hadn't had the right amount to sometime during the meal. Another change, this Rav Moshe Feinstein came up with, and I think it's brought down in this book of Hilchot Brachot. I think all poskim agree that, and this is an amazing point, even though you've washed and set a motzi on the bread, if you didn't have at any point of the meal, because that within 4 minutes, all the other foods you're eating require bracha rishona. They require shehakol, they require ha'etz, they require ha'adama, they require mazonos, because you really hadn't had the amount of bread necessary to make everything else tafel to the bread. The bread is no longer the main food of this meal because you haven't had enough of it within the time restriction that you must have. And therefore, every other food you're eating now has its own importance. And it's as if you haven't had bread at all in this meal. So, two very major differences when a person doesn't have enough bread or challah to be considered as if they're eating as eating a bread meal. No Birkas Hamazon, and yes to first brachos over every food you're eating in that meal. That's why it's interesting to begin with that crucial, important, that when you're giving out the bread in the beginning of a meal, mainly the big meals of Shabbos and Chag, you're giving out the challah. You could even, if you would like, announce this at the beginning of the meal if you feel comfortable, but at least for yourselves, for your immediate family, explain to them. Very important to begin the meal with half to 2/3 of a slice of challah, better even 2/3 of a slice, and you're sure, according to all poskim, that you've done a kazait, you've had a kazait within 4 minutes. Begin the meal that way, and then you're clear and clean of anything, of all these issues, of all these problems. Otherwise, you take a bite, you start with the first course, middle course here and there, take another bite, you're not really doing it properly. So that's the best way, and then you're clear of all issues. If we've already said all this, one last consideration to take. This is also something that many people are not aware of, and I think I mentioned it, but again, to make it clear again, that Birkat al netilat yadaim, we wash our hands before bread because bread had a holier level to it. In the days of the Truma, when the Kohanim used to eat Truma, and they had to purify their hands. To remind us of all this, we wash our hands. Besides the fact that we want them to be clean as we touch the bread, but it also has to do with the Truma and the holiness of the bread to purify our hands before we touch it. The amount of bread to be eaten to require a bracha over netilas yadayim. I'm not talking about the netilas yadayim itself. The netilas yadayim itself has to be done for any amount of bread. Even if you want to eat just a quarter of a slice, you must do the netilas yadayim beforehand. But the blessing over the netilas yadayim, it says, can only be done providing you have a kabetza of bread during the meal. Kabetza is double the amount of kazait. 2 kazaysi make a kabetza. So we're talking about at least a whole slice, if not a slice and a third. If we said 2/3 is a kazait, so a slice and 1/3 would be a kabetza. Only that amount allows you to make a bracha over the netilas yadayim. Otherwise, if you're planning on eating only a kazait, then wash, do the netilas yadayim, or without a bracha. It reminds us maybe of karpas that we had done less than a month ago. Elena said that we washed our hands like a netilas yadayim, but without saying the bracha. There's for a different reason. It doesn't have to do anything with this issue that we're talking about now. It doesn't have to do with the amount. It's for a different reason there. But the amount of bread that allows you to make a bracha on the netilas yadayim is a kabetza. Now that doesn't have to be finished within 4 minutes. It's enough that 1 kazait you eat within 4 minutes, and the rest, to reach a kabetza, you can eat along the meal. As long as you've consumed in the end a slice and a third, to make it short according to all poskim, of bread, and one of those, and 2/3 of it was within 4 minutes, then you're clear of all issues. Then the bracha netilas yadayim was okay. The brikas hamazon is okay. The not saying brachas over all the foods in that meal is okay. Then you're fine. So these are the ways, these are the rules to make it a proper meal that really has all the brachos thought through well and done correctly. Okay, so that's it for our introduction of the book Hilchot Brachot. We'll stop here. The next time we'll start the book of Hilchot Brachot, the book of Rabbi Phil Malka. This will be doing page by page as he goes along, based on the sequence of the Shulchan Aruch, Hilchot Brachot, from Siman Reish Bet and onwards. And we'll be doing practical situations of every type of food and every combination of foods. Many times we don't know the bracha to say over a soup that has in it water, has in it vegetables, has in it some chicken, all kinds of combinations of foods. What should the bracha be over this? Especially if we're not having it, take care. If we're not having it within a bread meal, it's sometimes very complicated to decide which bracha to say. So this is going to be a very delightful journey, I hope, that we learn all the various different types of situations and practical issues of brachos, and we know our brachos well, and we can then be proper Ovdei Hashem. Okay, I'll just take one question I see here from the chat. So what do you do if you wash, don't say bracha, and then decide to eat more bread in the middle? Okay, good point. Very good point. Yeah, I had that in my mind to say and I forgot. The question is, what happens if you're saying you thought, okay, very welcome. Let's say what happens if you had thought not to eat a kabetza of bread before washing, so you washed and did not say al netilas yadayim, but in the end, you were hungry enough and you did consume a kabetza after all. So in that case, you don't go back and make a bracha, or you don't go back and do another netilah. You've done it properly, because after all, the netilah is the main thing. The bracha is never me'akev. In any mitzvah we do, we accomplish the mitzvah even without the bracha. It's not the highest level. It's a higher level if we do say a bracha, but if we don't say it, it's still, we accomplish the mitzvah. So after all, you've washed. You've accomplished the purifying of your hand and the cleansifying of your hand to eat the bread. The fact that you had planned to eat less than kabetza, and therefore you didn't say a bracha, even if at the end you ate kabetza, it's not terrible. You're okay. Now, what happens the other way around? What happens if you had planned to eat kabetza, you were hungry, you were sure you're going to easily finish a slice and a third of bread, and in the end, you started eating, and you had some other foods and things like that, and you suddenly decide that you can't finish a kabetza. So you had said a bracha over netilat yadaim to begin with, because you had planned to eat kabetza, but then you got stuffed and full, or you had to rush for some reason, and you couldn't finish the meal, so you only had a kazait, or a kazait and a half, but you never reached kabetza. That's more problematic, because does this mean that the bracha netilat yadaim was a bracha batala, retroactively? Because in the end, you didn't finish kabetza. So here there's an amazing ritva. There's a ritva in the Shas. I don't remember, I think it's in Chulin Tzitva, but I'm not sure. The ritva says, and this is quoted by Rav Shlomo Zalman, many times this ritva. It applies to many situations of this type. The ritva says, if a person intends on doing the right thing, and when he does it, at that moment, he's doing it correctly. And in the end, plans change, and it's really not up to him so much. He had to rush, or he's overly full, and he can't have more. So says the Ritva, this is not a bracha levatala. It's not considered as if he did a bracha levatala. He doesn't have to force himself to complete the kabetza. If there's some good reason that he can't, then it's not a bracha levatala, because when he had done it originally, he did it with the proper intent. They were thinking the correct way, and he did it properly the way he had intended to begin with. And if after all things change, it's like almost onus. It's not his fault, and therefore he's not charged for saying a bracha batala retroactively when it was done properly to begin with. So in both directions, it turns out that you're okay the way you are in both directions. But still better to plan properly and act properly afterwards. Okay, so we'll stop here for today. Have a great day and a great week. And B'ezrat Hashem, meaningful Yom Ha'zikaron, commemorate their memory. Yep, and take their and use, as we said, beginning of this year, to be worthy of them giving up their lives and our lives ourselves, and B'ezrat Hashem to celebrate Yom Ha'atzmaut, although we'll be celebrating alone, each one in their homes, but we're all together in this, and we hope to, after all, see the goodness that comes out of this as soon as possible, with the very final redemption, Mashiach, and Beit HaMikdash soon. Okay.
Amen. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Gladly. Okay.
Thank you very much,
Bye-bye.
Steinberg.
Okay. Very welcome. All two. Bye-bye.